Did you know CK3 received a free update earlier this year that lets you play as Henry of Scots in all 3 start dates? He's a landless character who begins his journey with his father's sword, a man completely out of his own time. You can choose to help Bohemia to glory or simply do what every player's heart desires. Create your own chaotic adventure. On top of that, the other part of the Warhorse Studio and Paradox crossover is if you open up the CK3 music player next to the ledger, you'll find several tracks from Kingdom Come Deliverance ready to listen to. Since that free update though, CK3 has entered a bit of a content drought. We're still around 2 months away from the next major update, but if you've somehow missed the news, By God Alone is bringing some of the biggest changes yet. Theocracies are finally playable, Christianity is getting a massive overhaul, and you'll be able to step into the shoes of the Pope himself. As the head of the Catholic Church, you'll be able to do things like restrict certain tenets, issue papal bulls, appoint cardinals, and of course, excommunicate anyone who gets on your bad side. The catch? The content isn't arriving until the end of September, so what are you supposed to do until then? Well, why not revisit some of the campaigns we've already attempted this year? In this video, we'll go through 5 of our recent CK3 campaigns, look at what made each one of them fun, challenging, or unique. Then we will compare them to each other and see which one of the campaigns stands above the rest. Hopefully this gives you some inspiration for your own runs and helps keep CK3 fresh while we wait for By God Alone. So without further ado, please subscribe to the channel, and now let's get into it. First up on our tier list is how to form the smallest Roman Empire in Crusader Kings 3. On paper, this challenge sounds pretty straightforward, but once it gets rolling, it turns into one of the most complicated campaigns I've ever played. We started out in Provence, one of the best places to pull this off. It sits safely inside the HRE, giving you the protection of the emperor, being far enough from the Byzantines that we could build our own empire in peace. The opening strategy was simple: marry a genius wife, befriend the Pope, and turn the papacy into our personal bank account and mercenary company. We seized Sardinia, incredibly valuable mine, then used the papal claims to conquer Piedmont, Savoy, and Croatia. By 1076, our character Martin had enough gold and prestige to form Burgundy. Not long after, we conquered the Duchy of Lombardy, forming Italy and starting to look north towards the HRE. The emperor had served his purpose, so we did what any responsible medieval ruler would do: we murdered him. After the assassination succeeded, we launched a dissolution war, shattering the HRE and swallowed up a huge chunk of Europe. Owning half of the continent came with a few problems though. Rebellions broke out everywhere, France constantly needing rescuing, succession nearly tore the realm apart. Once things were stable, we unlocked the sanctioned loopholes, letting us buy duchy claims with piety. This opened up the floodgates and we rapidly expanded into Sicily, Greece, and the Byzantine Empire. Then everything went wrong. A war with Georgia snowballed into a year of plagues, rebellions, and supply disasters. We lost key territories including Rome and Toulouse, but eventually fought our way back and resumed the march east. At last, we conquered Anatolia, formed Armenia, and created a custom empire built around one ridiculous objective: making Cyprus the only remaining Byzantine de jure lands. With our custom empire created, we then were able to switch to the Byzantine empires and took the decision to form Rome. After more than a century of war, assassinations, civil wars, and one very confused pope, we had finally created the smallest Roman empire possible. There we had it, just Cyprus being the only de jure land for the empire. As for ranking this one, easy S tier. It's original, genuinely difficult, and completely different spin on the Restore the Roman Empire challenge. When the video came out, a bunch of people suggested I should split the Kingdom of Cyprus into 2 separate kingdom titles, so that when the empire split, both West and East Roman empires would technically exist entirely on the island of Cyprus. And to that I say, you people are absolutely insane. Seducing the Pope as the Pope. The goal is simple: become the Pope. Sort of. Since you actually can't play as the Pope yet, the plan was to destroy the papacy, turn the Pope into an ordinary landless character, then we'd restore the papacy with a brand new Pope, become an adventurer, adopt the ousted Pope as our successor, and finally seduce the reigning Pope to create the history's first ever Pope-on-Pope romance. To pull it off, we chose to start as Robert the Fox in 1066, went on an absolute rampage through southern Italy. We farmed piety with funerals and pilgrimages, abused his scripted claims, conquered Sicily and Sardinia, converting to Islam for easy expansion, and slowly dismantled the Papal States and the Holy Roman Empire. After years of war, Rome finally fell, Pope lost every county, and by 1096 we officially destroyed the papacy. We immediately converted back to Christianity, restored the papacy, creating a brand new pope, while the old one, Stephanos, was reduced to just another wandering courtier. With that setup completed, we intentionally killed off our emperor so that we could continue as an adventurer. Captain Ricard tracked down the ex-pope in Vivento, showered him with gifts and love letters to become his soulmate, recruited him to camp, adopted him as his successor, and then promptly stress-killed himself. Now playing as the former pope, Stephanos, all that remained was the final challenge. Seducing the new reigning pope, we converted back to Islam to avoid Catholic opinion penalties, loaded him up with gifts, including the papal tiara, and started a seduction scheme. Everything came down to whether the Pope on Pope love could actually become reality. And in the end, we successfully seduced the Pope, which lasted all of 5 minutes until the HRE told on us. So, where does the Pope Yowie challenge rank? Considering it's one of my most unhinged ideas I've ever had, right up there next to Roman Outline Challenge, it's an easy S tier. If you want to recreate this run yourself, I'd recommend avoiding Iron Man mode. The timing is surprisingly tight, and a nasty plague can completely derail the setup. You'll also want to change the game's sexuality rules to equal, because if the Pope isn't a little bit bisexual, you've got a virtually no chance making a romance happen. After all, same-sex relationships are considered sinful by the Catholics during this period, so without that setting, you're relying almost entirely on luck. This next campaign idea is one of our most recent challenge runs, the Ultimate Party Challenge. How many activities can you squeeze into one lifetime? At first, it sounds easy. Just host a feast every few years, throw in a tournament, a funeral, a grand wedding, and you'll hit the goal eventually, right? Not even close. If you're only waiting on activity cooldowns, your ruler will be dead long before you rack up an impressive total. The secret is grand weddings. Unlike most activities, they don't have cooldowns, as long as you have someone to marry off. So our strategy was simple. Start with 18 sons to create an endless supply of weddings. We also picked the 1178 start date so that money would not be a problem after the first couple of years. Here's a fun side note. Grand weddings are also one of the fastest ways to complete an entire lifestyle tree. After the wedding, there's a feast, which lets you have a couple events that let you side with one character or another. Besides opinion boost, siding with a character grants lifestyle experience based on their education trait. A guest with a 4-star education awards around 500 lifestyle experience in a single event, which works out roughly to a perk and a half per wedding if you get them every time. There's also the event and another thing, which can award a free diplomatic perk if you pass the skill check. Focusing on diplomacy, and after around 11 weddings, you can realistically finish an entire lifestyle tree. So, next time you're planning a grand wedding, pay attention to who's attending. They might be worth more than the gift they bring. With the strategy figured out, all we had to do was marry off our endless line of children and cruise to our goal of 50 activities. Naturally, CK3 had other plans. Early on, everything went smoothly, but travel time quickly became the biggest bottleneck. We started inviting fewer and fewer guests just to speed things up. Although manually deselecting everyone became its own chore, a guest preset would be a lifesaver. Then the plague arrived. One son we had promised in a marriage came down with a contagious disease, infected half the court, and suddenly years of prime party hosting time disappeared while everybody recovered. Once the plague finally passed, we had to speedrun weddings just to make up for the lost time. Another reoccurring problem was the relatives leaving court before we had a chance to arrange a marriage for them, forcing us to recruit them back before sending out another proposal. Despite everything, we still managed to host 35 activities, most of the grand weddings, but we also squeezed a handful of feasts, grand tournaments, a coronation, and a funeral. As for the challenge itself, I'd give it a A tier. Not every run is going to be S tier, guys. Come on, don't be like that. But this one was a surprisingly fun one-off. It really puts into perspective what rulers' reigns would look like if they spent decades doing nothing but throwing lavish celebrations. Thousands upon thousands of pieces of gold vanishing into feasts, tournaments, and extravagant weddings while the peasants pick up the bill. If you want a real-world example, just check out the events that led to the French Revolution. This next campaign took me 3 attempts to get it down. It's forming all 8 kingdoms of Britannia, England, Wales, Ireland, Scotland, and of course, their 4 brothers who are made by decisions: Cumbria, Cornwall, Man and the Isles, and Danelaw, all of which can only be formed if you're not a king. So the real challenge here is trying to get each one of these kingdoms formed in only 4 generations. Did I mention it gets even more tricky because if Danelaw loses all of its lands, it ceases to exist? So what did we do? First off, we started off as our boy Halfdan Whiteshirt, taking Northumbria, which is basically free. After the quick victory, we grabbed a county in Mercia and formed Danelaw, the only kingdom in CK3 that creates another kingdom. By 870, Danelaw was formed, and we moved on to our next goal, becoming King Ivor and creating the Kingdom of Man and the Isles. Thankfully, Ivor was available through the choice of New Destiny and already had most of the requirements completed. The only problem was becoming a living legend, which meant grinding thousands of prestige. The best way to do that? Raiding. And when the enemy shows up, we made sure to farm even more prestige by crushing their armies. While grinding, we were preparing for our future by taking Cornwall and setting up our second son to eventually form Cumbria. By 894, we had enough prestige and finally created Man in the Isles. 2 kingdoms down, several more to go. Next came Cumbria. We had to steal Northumbria away from Danelaw, prepping our heir, and dealing with some very inconvenient family members holding lands we needed. After a few necessary removals and a brutal war for Westmoreland that cost thousands of lives, we finally had everything required. Declared independence while our overlords were distracted fighting England. Plan worked, and by 913 we formed Cumbria. That left Cornwall. We switched to Catholicism to reduce rebellions and gain access to the Pope's wallet, then waited for our son Ivor to inherit the lands. Unfortunately, for the old age caught up to us, and after ignoring several murder plots, our character finally died. Luckily, we had prepared the successor properly, giving Cornwall to Ivor and the rest of the lands to our other heir. Now, as a young Ivor, the grind continued. Thanks to the Man and the Isles raiding bonus, we farming prestige until we reached the fame level needed for Cornwall. After a few failed wars and a lot of waiting, by 948, we had formed the majority of the Britannian kingdoms, except for Wales. And that was the problem. Wales was controlled by our brother. We assumed he would eventually form it himself, but of course, he didn't. So after nearly a century of planning, wars and assassinations, prestige grinding, and a whole lot of suffering, and unfortunately, it did not come to fruition. Ranking for 8 kingdoms is S tier. I think the challenge can be one of the longer ones on this list, just because you have to live out 4 different character lives to get their 4 decisions. It also kind of a speed run due to having to get everything done before Danelaw implodes or is conquered, like in my case, by a family member. All in all, it's a good campaign if you want to spend a bunch of time ruining everyone's life in the British Isles. This final challenge can be done with pretty much any of the 5 hegemonies. The Mongols, China, Dar al-Islam, India, but the most rewarding is done for Rome. I'm talking about playing as second in command to an AI character, being the best vassal ever by propping up the empire to become a full hegemon. Here's how we did it. We started out as a custom character, Philip of Macedon, in the Byzantine Empire. He wasn't some overpowered monster. His entire strategy was simple. Become the richest steward possible, then use the money to hire endless armies of mercenaries. First, we went searching for the only genius within range to get our system going. After some royal matchmaking, we secured an alliance and soon had our heir Alex. And in 1076, we launched our first conquest against Tunis. The war was easy, especially after capturing their king, giving us enough war score to claim 3 new counties. With our new wealth, we turned our attention towards the biggest threat, the Pope. If we wait too long, the papacy will only grow stronger, so we called on our allies France and Poland and launched an invasion of Rome. The war was a complete success, giving us back the city of Rome. Now that Pope was defeated, it was time to weaken the HRE. We started plotting against the emperor, only for him to conveniently die on his own, allowing us to grab Genoa and adding another key piece we need to restore Rome. Meanwhile, Persia was expanding in Anatolia, but luckily they weren't taking any lands we needed. By 1087, we conquered Venice, gaining more resources and the Doge Palace. Throughout these wars, we kept hosting hunts and feasts to build up prestige for our eventual master plan. After taking Jerusalem from Egypt, we suffered a brutal defeat against the Adal, losing a 9-year war. However, while fighting there, we managed to capture Croatia, so it wasn't a complete disaster. By 1104, our economy was unstoppable, making 24 gold a month, allowing us to summon thousands of mercenaries. We went back to the HRE for Romagna, while also finally creating a Greek hybrid culture that spread across our lands. Then came the real challenge, forcing the Byzantines to restore the Roman Empire. We needed the emperor to become a living legend, so we launched Operation Fouras, stuffing our emperor full of prestige through the endless gifts, weddings, and schemes. After years of grinding, we got him close, but Philip never lived to see the dream complete. His grandson, Glaucus, inherited the mission, and the world immediately descended into chaos. Catholic Europe crusades against Orthodox faith, while a second crusade simultaneously tried to place a random woman on the Byzantine throne. We jumped into both wars, destroying the papal armies and farming prestige from every wave of enemies that arrived. By 1143, we finally had a new emperor, Comitius, who looked like our best chance. We helped him end his wars, kept him distracted with feasts and weddings, and restarted Operation Farguas with over 15,000 prestige ready to push him towards living legend. Unfortunately, the AI had other plans. The Emperor declared another 3 wars at once, forcing us back into the battle. After 2 years of non-stop fighting, we finally secured victory, and the Emperor celebrated his martial achievements with a triumph. The dream of restoring Rome was closer than ever, but the AI was making sure that it would be anything but easy. Finally, the Emperor deigned to click the button, and just like that, we had helped the Roman Empire be formed by the AI. Ranking this campaign is an easy S tier campaign. I haven't tried it with the other hegemons. I imagine they'd all be a lot of fun. The Mongol Khanate would probably be the hardest, since you first need your liege to become Khan of Khans and actually win the war before you go on a conquering spree. China, India, and Dar al-Islam would all be much easier by comparison. I could definitely see us revisiting this idea as a future run. Just like that, those are some of our most recent campaigns that we've done on the channel. What did you think of the ranking? Let me know if you want to see more ranking videos or videos of us talking about our past campaigns. Hopefully these inspired you to pick up CK3 at least one more time before the big release in September. That's all I have for you today. Thanks so very much for watching this little video. If you did enjoy it, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And as always, have a good rest of your day. Ciao.